Welcome to World Luxury. Join us as we continue to explore the world of the rich and wealthy. In today's video, we'll discover the story of the poor Japanese boy who created Honda. Don't forget to hit that like button, turn on that notification bell, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting videos. Without further ado, let's begin. Gihei Honda and his wife greeted the birth of their first child, Soichiro Honda, in 1906 in Tenryo, Shizuoka, a little impoverished community at the bottom of Mount Fuji. Soichiro's father was a rural blacksmith who repaired bikes on the side, and his mother was a skilled weaver. Soichiro was reared in a poor family and was seized of 5 of his brothers and sisters to illness as a child. When Soichiro was just 8 years old, he was out and about his daily life in the surrounding area when he noticed a strange rumble. Pursuing the noise, he stumbled upon a machine dubbed as the Ford Model T, which intrigued Soichiro. This encounter changed the way he interacted with machines for the rest of his life. He learned how to wet farm machinery blades, fix bicycles, and was attracted with all types of motors and machines. Soichiro despised school and spent a great deal of his life assisting his father in his bicycle repair company. Soichiro stumbled across a magazine advertisement for Art Shokai, a Tokyo-based automotive service company, in 1922. So he wrote to Art Shokai and inquired about a position. Fortunately, he received a favorable response, and at a young age of 15, Soichiro left his school and his home and traveled to Tokyo to pursue his aspirations. Art Shokai. When Soichiro got there, the owner, Yuzo Sakakibara, had prior assigned him a duty which was to look after the owner's child. Soichiro was upset, but he preferred to stay, since he was embarrassed to return home, disappointed, and face his parents. As time passed, the owner found himself unable to meet the tremendous demand for his services, so he recruited the assistance of Soichiro. Even though Soichiro began with basic jobs, he eventually rose through the ranks until he became an established technician at the company. His aptitude and dedication drew the notice of the owner, who proceeded to employ little Soichiro under his guidance and educate him not just mechanical fixes, but also the business aspect of the company. Sakakibara began building Formula One automobiles with the assistance of his workforce, including Soichiro, in 1923. Their first model was the Art Daimler, which was manufactured with second-hand Daimler engine. Their second model was the Curtiss, which was built with a used engine from an American Curtiss biplane. The Mitchell was then mounted on the chassis of another American automobile. This car would go on to win the 5th Japanese Motor Car Championships in 1924, with Sakakibara's brother as the driver and Soichiro as the assisting engineer. It was a life-changing experience for the 17-year-old. On his own, Soichiro got called up for military service in 1926, but he failed the medical exams because he was colorblind. He was pardoned and able to continue employment at Art Shokai. By 1928, Yuzo Sakakibara was looking to grow his business and planned to start an Art Shokai branch in Hamamatsu. He believed that his young apprentice was the best man to be placed in charge. Soichiro was to lead the new branch at his age of 21. However, Soichiro's repair shop failed throughout the first year, owing to people's reluctance to entrust their cars to someone so inexperienced and young. Soichiro had to depend on the parts that other repair centers discarded. Nonetheless, he applied all the knowledge and skills he had gained over the years. He eventually succeeded in expanding his firm. His new shop had evolved from a one-man enterprise to an employee base of 30 by the 1930s. During the following years, the branch expanded at an astounding rate. Soichiro was not only a skilled mechanic, but also a phenomenal racing driver. This ability set him apart from his colleagues. Soichiro developed the Hamamatsu race car within his business, in which he achieved an all-new record by racing it as high as 120 km per hour, a mark that had stood in Japan for 20 years. Honda, on the other hand, was engaged in a terrible crash in June 1936 and nearly died. Soichiro's left arm had been fractured, his shoulder had been dislocated, and his face had been badly injured. Despite spending a few months in the hospital recovering from his injuries, Soichiro resurfaced in the racetrack 4 months later. But after considerable thought with his family members, he never competed again. Honda was tired and restless from his repair work in 1936, and he wanted to do more, so he planned to proceed onto manufacturing vehicle parts. He advocated separating the Art Shokai Hamamatsu branch into a new company for this purpose, but the company's stockholders refused. The investors acknowledged that the present demands and labor from the repair facility were profitable enough, and they were unwilling to take a risk on an investment they thought was unneeded. Soichiro decided to start his own company to manufacture piston rings and establish the Tokai Seiki Heavy Industry, with one of his close friends, Shichiro Kato, as president. Trial and error. Soichiro and Kato worked relentlessly on their new business, establishing the Art Piston Ring Research Center. Soichiro continued to work at his Hamamatsu branch, devoting his days in the repair shop and his nights creating pistons. They labored for a lengthy period to make any progress at all. Soichiro chose to take classes as a part-time student at the Hamamatsu Industrial Institute to strengthen his knowledge of metallurgy following a string of failures. Soichiro failed to create an effectively working piston until 1939. He abandoned his employment at Art Shokai, handing over the branch to some of his trainees, and went to work full-time at his new company. Honda began making pistons on a daily basis, but his designs were still faulty and far from the quality that was required. Toyota called Soichiro to build pistons for the firm, and only 3 of the 50 he provided satisfied Toyota's standards. Soichiro had a major setback, yet he did not give up. He spent the following few decades traveling around Japan, touring steel-making enterprises and universities to deepen his expertise of piston ring fabrication. Soichiro tried again after developing confidence in his expertise and experience. Not only did his new pistons pass quality inspection, but orders began to pour in from all across the country, sufficiently so that the company had to hire nearly 2,000 workers simply to keep up with the requests. Soichiro and his business were doing well until Japan entered the Pacific War in 1941, when they were placed under the direct supervision and authority of the Ministry of Munitions. The next year, Toyota acquired 45% of the company's shares, and Soichiro was demoted from president to senior managing director. As employees became drafted for military service, they began to resign, and his company began to flounder. In 1944, alerts for airstrikes became more frequent in Japan, putting Hamamatsu in grave risk. The plant of Soichiro's company was destroyed in a direct bomb strike. The Nankai earthquake destroyed the region in January 1945, and the Iwata factory collapsed. Japan eventually surrendered in August 1945, but by then, Soichiro had nearly lost everything. After the war, Soichiro decided to sell what was left of his company to Toyota for 450,000 yen. The idea that shaped everything. He discovered a generator engine belonging to the Japanese soldiers and was drawn to it. He then came up with the idea of attaching this engine to a bicycle after finding out how it operated. In 1946, Soichiro established the Honda Technical Research Institute in his former warehouse, with the sole objective of figuring out how to build motorcycles. He and his 12 employees carried through with his proposal and successfully assembled a motorcycle utilizing engines he discovered and other spare parts. These new bicycles were an instant success, and sales began to pour in from all over the country. Soichiro eventually ran out of old engines. He proceeded to design and build his own. In 1947, he completed the Type A engine, and for the first time, the Honda name appeared on a motorcycle. The Honda Motor Company. Soichiro Honda established the Honda Motor Company in 1948, with an initial objective of producing motorcycles to help Japanese laborers get around. The main issue was that Soichiro needed additional money to grow his production.